First of all, thank you, Marcus, for playing for us during assemblies. Before I begin my sharing today, I'd like to identify several teams that fought hard this weekend or the past weekends. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the handball team, the Sea Grade handball team, for capturing the Sea Grade championships, and the boys from the Dragon Boat team for being victorious in their maiden voyage. Please give them a big hand for their success. But more importantly, I would also like to recognize the boys from the badminton team and the basketball team and the Chinese debaters who fought so hard a few weeks ago. Sometimes when we go out and we give our 100%, we don't always get the results that we expect of ourselves, or sometimes when we don't capture the championships, we get a little bit disappointed. But I'm proud of the way you handled the competition. I'm proud of the way you displayed sportsmanship. And so members of the badminton team, Sea Grade, members of the Sea Grade basketball team, and the Chinese debate team, I'm sure you will come back even stronger than before. This morning, I would just like to share with you a trip that I took to Beijing a couple of weeks ago. The first part of the trip, or the main part of the trip, was a principals enhancement program that was organized for about 60 principals. So I was one of the 60 principals. There were about 30 principals from primary schools and 30 from secondary schools. We visited the education department, heard about the sharing, about the scope and the difficulty of setting policies for the entire country, for different provinces, and the challenges they face in the execution of these policies with all the different cultures of the different provinces. And then, of course, we met experts who interpreted the basic law for us from their perspective. We also visited the head of Tsinghua Science Park, who explained to us why the country has to continue to innovate instead of doing what they did before because of the various needs of the nation. But what was most interesting for me was when we visited several Tier 1 schools in Beijing and had a chance to talk to the teachers and the principals of these schools. And we saw how differently, even though the performances were quite similar, producing great scholars, producing great students who enter major universities, good all-round programs, but we saw that the culture differs between schools, and it has a lot to do with the principals and the teachers in it. And we saw that, yes, performance and results are very important, but I think the culture within the school and the way the students are brought up is also very, very important. So in the future, when I have a chance, I would love to share with you. And of course, there were also experts who shared with us the hot topic for the world, for schools in this era, in this period of time. They shared about STEM, which is for those of you who are not familiar, it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And lately, they've added an A into it, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, and how they interrelate and how they are to be incorporated together. We're still exploring that, so it's good to listen to some experts share their insights with us. So I was with this group for about 4.5 days, but actually, I left the group on the 5th day because an old boy and his family invited me to a different function. They formed a group to support Peking University 20 years ago, and so they celebrated their 20th anniversary of supporting the university. To me, it was my first trip to Peking University, and it was somewhat of a fabled institution because of the stories, because of the history behind it. After all, Peking University is the home base for the May 4th movement in 1919 and also the democratic movement in 1989. So I was quite fascinated and was looking forward to visit the campus. And I was happy that these old boys came and greeted me, and we looked around. But what really caught my attention, besides the sharing from the students, was this place around the campus, but in the spirit that permeates through the place that they emphasize. These two things, independent teaching, free thinking, and also diversity and tolerance. And these seem to be very important attributes to us, especially the way we understand our nation today. We feel that these are important attributes that we must perpetuate. And it was very interesting to see that Peking University embraced these. But there was one place on the campus that really caught my attention, and that's the Stanford Center in Peking University. So there's actually a campus within a campus, by a campus from a major US university on the campus of Peking University. And walking into the campus of the Stanford Center immediately caught my attention because of the design of it. As you understand, Peking University is built on the imperial gardens of Beijing. And so everything on the surface, at least half of the campus, is based on classical design. So as you walk into it, into the Stanford Center, you see this tree in the middle of the glass. That's actually the emblem of Stanford University, but it blended quite well into the Chinese design. And if you can see the painting on top of a little house there, that's actually a painting of the Stanford campus in Palo Alto. Again, it blended quite nicely into the classical Chinese design. And as I mentioned, I was also able to meet with some of the old boys there, along with Dr. Chan and Ms. Jia, and you probably recognize some of the boys there. Maybe the faces are too small for you to recognize, but these are boys who are studying in Tsinghua and Peking University right now. As I mentioned, the emblem of Stanford University. So this is the design of the campus, and I want to share with you the design because on the physical level and the literal level, it represented, it kind of inspired me to think about a few things. First of all, as you walk into the Stanford Center, you can see the classical design on the surface. So whatever is ground level up, it's classical design. And as you walk inside, there are 3 stories underground. And under the surface is a very, very modern structure with, well, here you can see the painting of Stanford again. But underneath, as you go down subterranean, you can see these conference rooms where they hold conferences, discussions, exchanges. And it's completely different from the ground floor, but it doesn't feel that you're in underground at all. And they take in natural skylight. These are conference rooms where they have real-time classes with the students of Stanford University. What you see here, this screen, is actually Michelle Obama at Peking University visiting Beijing. And these students that you see on your left side are actually students in Stanford University. So they have classes simultaneously between the two places. And so you have a combination of East and West, modern and classic, Chinese and American, and it's quite inspiring and thought-provoking, at least for me. And it was even more interesting to find that this whole project was actually facilitated by different levels of personnel, and quite a few were Hong Kong citizens. First of all, the main contributor to this project is actually a Hong Kong person. And then the team of architects, there are also citizens from Hong Kong designing this campus. And also, as you can imagine, having a campus within a campus takes a lot of negotiations. There are a lot of legal and logistic liaison going on. And our old boys and some of the citizens from Hong Kong were involved in the mediation and the setup of this whole thing. And as I mentioned before, our old boys, this family, have been supporting the college for about 20 years now. So 20 years ago, they started financing the Zhongyun, the top scorers from the 30 provinces all over China. And so even though they're top scorers, most of the time they are very, very poor. They don't have the means to go through university. And so our Old Boys family, they pay for these students' livelihood. And it has been 20 years. And so the last weekend, they all gathered together and shared the life stories. And so that was a touching moment. And their principle, the Old Boys family, is to first help them, and then they can help themselves. And then as they strengthen themselves, they help others. So I thought that was quite inspiring. And at the Stanford Center, we were able to listen to a couple of lectures done at Palo Alto, sharing about the election, and how it affects East Asian policy and all that. And so it was quite fascinating to see about international diplomacy as we read in the newspapers, and sometimes the hostile rhetoric when we read about national security, especially near the South China Sea. All these, I'm sure Mr. Im and Mr. Wong are much more familiar with. I won't bore you with that. But as we read the newspaper, as we see the hostile rhetoric, we see that there's another level at this center where students and professors and experts come together to solve global and urban problems and medical problems. They engage in dialogue, and they can engage in collaboration, in exchanges, and in understanding. The only question that lingered in my mind throughout the whole exercise is that there's so much collaboration and so many experts coming in, talking to the top students in the States and in China. How much does this affect the people in power, and how much do they listen to these dialogues and set their policies? And I reckon as long as they don't stop talking to each other, there is hope for a better world. There's hope for better collaborations. But me, as a citizen of Hong Kong and as a bystander of sorts, I don't have all the answers. So I won't end with a statement. Instead, I will end today's sharing with questions. A question as much for me as it is for you all, as much for people in the States, in the mainland, as you all here in Hong Kong. So my questions are, what if we keep engaging the best minds from all corners of the earth? What if we keep engaging them to try to find solutions for different parts of the world? And what if we never give up hope for a better world? If we keep engaging in dialogue, in problem-solving conversations. So I want to leave these two questions with you all this morning. Thank you.